All eyes are on the weekend weather system, but before we get there, we have some impactful weather coming down the pipeline. We're going to break it all down over the next few minutes. What's going on, guys? Meteorologist Jonathan Kegis. In this video, we are going to talk about the wind that has been increasing over the past couple of days, why it's doing so. It's kind of unrelated to our developing storm, at least over the next couple of days, and then the storm will help to increase the winds further for the weekend. We are going to talk about the latest timing of this big system coming through. Main threat looks to be a widespread potential flood threat. And then we'll talk about the forecast for tomorrow. We're going to break it down from North Florida to Central Florida to South Florida. So stick around toward the end of the video if you're interested in the forecast side. Before we break it all down, if you want to stay updated on all things Florida weather, you have come to the right place. Hit that subscribe button. And if you just happen to find this content helpful, hit that thumbs up button for me. Small ask, but it really, really does help us out a lot. So I would appreciate that a ton. Let's get into it. We're going to start with the wind. This is unrelated now of our future developing system once we get into Friday and Saturday, but you see this big chunk of high pressure anchored over to the mid-Atlantic and southeast. All of this blue represents high pressure, so it is very expansive. It's doing what we call tightening up the pressure gradient as we have low pressure down closer to the equator. With high pressure, you have wind going clockwise around high pressure systems. So we have those strong winds coming off of the Atlantic Ocean. It's helping to chew up the seas. It's going to be chewing up our beaches. As you might imagine, even though temperature-wise it's not the best beach weather anyway, it's going to be dangerous to get into the ocean, whether you're taking out the boat or going in for a swim. Just be very, very careful out there because those winds are going to increase. The waves are going to increase, and that rip current risk is through the roof. Now, gradually, we are going to have our area of low pressure developing here, which is going to increase the pressure gradient further. When you get big areas of high pressure with big areas of low pressure in between, in close proximity, the air in between increases. So that's what we're going to be looking for as we move into Friday. And speaking of Friday, that's when we start to see our big guy start to take shape. So here we go. There's 1 o'clock on Friday afternoon. It's all this mess here. We had a cold front kind of dying, stalling out here, and this is kind of triggering this area of low pressure, this disturbance that's going to get going here over the next couple of days. Now, latest timing on this, the Euro wants to be slower. We'll talk about why in just 1 second. It's favoring more later in the day, Saturday into Sunday. But here is our chunk of low pressure that has come more in line with the GFS, at least lifting it further north. If you remember a couple days ago, we had the Euro solution kind of right down in here. That would extend a warm front right through and create this best severe weather potential with ingredients coming together right through the I-4 corridor. Now, with the lack of instability, and I don't think there's going to be a ton of instability to really force up a lot of thunderstorms. There's going to be a lot of rain, and that rain is going to be heavy. But in terms of getting a lot of thunderstorms, you kind of need the sun to come out a little bit. We're also dealing with kind of a what we call a warm core feature, kind of what a tropical system would be. This is not going to be tropical because it's going to quickly merge with a non-tropical system, which I will show you in just 1 second if you stick around. Long story short, there's going to be a very localized area tied to that warm front where we're going to have a severe weather risk and maybe the potential for a tornado or two. So again, it's likely going to be localized and tied to that warm front. So we're going to track that very, very carefully, that part of the weather episode coming into the weekend. Then we have that big chunk of low pressure slide off there, and as it moves towards the Carolinas, we get the wind on the backside like this, counterclockwise flow around low pressure, and then that's going to really push the Atlantic in. So as we get into Sunday, we're talking about a coastal flood threat. Now remember, coastal flooding has nothing to do with rainfall. We could have freshwater flooding along the coast. There could be several inches of rain, and I'll show you that again in just 1 second. But that's from the Atlantic kind of being pushed right on through. Let me get that warm front out of there. That is from another time. GFS model on Friday. This is going to be 1 o'clock. It's a little faster, so the rain starts later in the morning on Saturday. It's also a little further north. We'll get into why that is in just 1 second, but as you see it there, it kind of lifts up, and then here is our developing warm front. So that severe weather threat going to be a little bit north of Orlando if the GFS is going to come into fruition. So again, there's a couple of things at play here, and it's really, really hard to pin down because we're going to be looking for a localized area for potential severe weather. Again, the widespread rain, that is a slam dunk. Here's the deal. We're going to be watching 3 areas try to come together. We have piece 1 way up here, coming out of Canada. We have piece 2 coming out here, and then this is our disturbance that gets going on Friday. And the 3 of these things are going to come together, and it's how they come together. That's what we'll end up seeing kind of the end of this story here, the materialization and development of the storm. So we have the phasing up here. You saw those 2 pieces kind of become one in the upper Midwest. We still have our guy hanging out here in the Gulf of Mexico. Now, one of the reasons why it's slower, these 2 pieces are further away from each other. I'll show you the GFS solution in 1 second. And then this guy kind of pushes the disturbance into Florida into the east. So I don't think that the center of this thing is going to come down into South Florida. It's going to be like I-4 corridor and north. You'll notice, though, that the GFS is kind of a lot different. We have our Area 1 up in Canada. We have a bigger Area 2 right in here, and it's also a little further south. And then Area 3 hanging down here in the western Gulf of Mexico by Friday afternoon. Now, watch what happens. This phase hasn't really happened yet, so this is 1 o'clock. But we also have a deeper trough right here, so number 2. And then here's our guy, number 3, the main little southern branch. As we push this forward, you would notice here, there's a huge difference. That other piece here is kind of left unfazed, but then the southern 2 come together and create a bigger storm for Florida. So there's really the 2 differences. Does that phase happen into the upper Midwest and leaving a stronger piece in that direction, leaving us with, quote-unquote, just that lone piece, or do we have that injection of some energy into our developing storm to kind of give it more oomph and then to kind of pull the center closer to the Big Bend and Panhandle? Everybody in the peninsula is still going to get rain, but it's just going to be that focusable severe weather threat, that localized severe weather threat, and that is something that is hard to pin down right now because there's such model discrepancy on the little details. Those are going to come into play as we get closer to the event, as we get into more Friday, Thursday, and into Friday. So here we go. This is going to be the rainfall all the way through Sunday night, and this is on a widespread scale again. If the GFS were to come into fruition again, we'd be talking about several inches of rain also being added toward the Panhandle. So I want to be clear about that. This is what the Euro is suggesting here, and you see the widespread, really 2 to 4 inches of rain. I would not be surprised, though, if we go localized 4, 5, 6, or maybe even higher than that, especially right along the coast, because what happens with these coastal systems, as they pull away, we start to get that onshore flow again, and we get a forcing little convergent boundary right in through here that helps to force up extra rain and focuses that heavy rain right along the coast. We've seen that a couple of times already this season. So we're going to watch that very, very closely. The other thing is the wind. Again, it is going to be breezy. It is going to be gusty. You'll want to tend to your Christmas inflatables that are outside again, because they are going to be blowing all over the place, and that is going to become an even more common sight as we move into Thursday and Friday. But then once this system gets here, there's 9 o'clock on Saturday morning. It is gusty. Watch the winds really ramp up. We're talking about 35 to 45 mile-per-hour gusts from Miami to Fort Pierce into Melbourne, Flagler Beach. It's going to get very, very gusty. Maybe a little bit lull as that center kind of slides on. That's the one thing. It's different than a tropical storm. It's not the center that's the strongest. It's kind of the outlying areas of the area of low pressure. That's one of the main differences when you're talking about a tropical and non-tropical system. But there you go on Sunday, those wind gusts 35 to 40 miles an hour across most of Florida as that system kind of gets stronger as it lifts toward the Carolinas. So it is going to be windy. It is going to be wet. The one thing that we are working on fine-tuning is that localized severe weather. And again, tornadoes would be possible in that area. So that's why it's very, very particular, and pinpointing that is extremely important. All right, so the clouds start to come back in. It is going to be windy in North Florida. Temperatures back to the mid to upper 60s across the board. St. Augustine, what's going on? We're hanging around 70 with those rain chances a little bit on the coast. 69 in Cedar Key, Apalachicola. We are at 66 degrees for your day tomorrow. We're back to the low to mid 70s. These little icons that you see here, that is the wind icon. So if you're wondering what the heck is going on with a couple of these icons here, that is the icon for wind. It is going to be windy tomorrow. Those are the sustained winds east, about 20 miles an hour, 24, 25 miles an hour along the coast. Gusts again 30 to 40 miles an hour closer to the coast. So again, it is going to be windy. Once we get into tomorrow for South Florida, we're in the mid-70s in Fort Lauderdale. Much better day for us in Key West and Marathon. So that's kind of the better place to be. So it's going to be breezy. but the wind out of the northeast at about 20 to 24 miles an hour, gusts a little bit higher than that. So even in Key West, even in Marathon, even in the Keys, it is going to be windy. It's just going to be a little drier tomorrow. Alrighty, guys, that was a lot. I know I kind of rambled on at times, so I apologize for that. Don't crush me in the comments. Nonetheless, I wanted to just show you the kind of differences, and it's kind of long-winded to do that because there's a lot of meteorology, there's a lot of dynamics that are coming into play with this, but just know localized severe weather threat with this, a lot of heavy rain coming, and a lot of gusty winds. Tend to those Christmas inflatables. They're going to be blowing around like crazy. Alrighty, guys, that about does it. We're going to keep a close eye on this for you. We'll talk much more about this coming up in our next video. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys. We'll catch you next time.